We're delighted that Lidiane Jones has joined us today. Lidiane was the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Salesforce, and then was selected for what I think was quite a tough job, and that is as the Chief Executive Officer of Slack, post the acquisition that Salesforce made of Slack, something that so many of us use in our day-to-day lives. It was a big gig. With Lidiane's background in product and technology, she started infusing the platform with carefully thought out and very deliberate motion of artificial intelligence. From Slack, she went to Bumble. That's pretty different. So fascinating choice and move, publicly traded, very focused, of course, on women and how women are affected from a matchmaking perspective. But that's not all Lidiane does. She leans into female networks, her Latina roots, but also work in philanthropy, and of course, another role, which is parent and life partner. Lidiane, welcome. Delighted to have you.
It's an honor to be here. And I was mentioning to Aled just before this call, I'm excited about the work that you guys are doing at Intellistack. I'm a nerd when it comes to workflow automation and data activation, and just seeing the progress that you have made over the last couple of years has been really incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. I have to say, you did say something about the marketplace that we are in from a workflow perspective and the potential future benefits. Maybe you'll just share that for the Intellistack team if we could be a little self-indulgent.
One of the areas that I think is going to be the greatest potential of growth from generative AI, as it continues to evolve, as it evolves from like the generic models to agents, it is actually on automation and productivity. And it comes from workflow productivity improvement. And the fact that you guys have the data integration, the data activation, as well as the workflow, I think it's a really special place. I was really pitching that at Salesforce, candidly, that Slack had a little bit of workflow automation. You know that there are flows, but they're very light. And then Salesforce's platform has a lot of workflow automation, but they're fairly disconnected. So I think there's a huge opportunity in this space. So I think the strategy is the right one. It's all about execution, right? And I'm excited to see the progress that you've made because it shows a lot of focus.
Look, I'd love to start at the apex of you being asked to join Slack as the CEO. Was it a surprise to be asked that? And was that a difficult decision to make? And then how was the cultural integration of those two extraordinary companies?
Yeah, I was very honored to even be considered. Stuart and at the time Brett Taylor reaching out, I was genuinely honored. And when I did get the job, it took me a day or two to decide if I wanted it, not because I didn't think it was a great job or a great company, but because I feel like with companies like Slack, where the brand represents so much for customers, I wanted to make sure that I could do it right. Just the differences, it probably couldn't be, farther apart. Slack operated, I don't know if it still does today, but it definitely operated its own product development as a consumer company, which is extremely rare for a B2B business. And it was designed that way from its early days. That's why the product-led growth, so if you go to slack.com, you can start your own instance of Slack without needing an IT organization. It's very designed to be consumer-like. And so every part of the DNA of the team, even how the sales team is structured, it was very product-led in its growth. And marketing was product-led, all of it. And Salesforce is very much tops-down B2B. So roadmaps are shared way ahead of time, and then it's going to happen at the next release, and things are very event-based. And so there was a lot of differences in the natural instance after acquisition, especially large, very iconic on their own right, is to say my way is the best way. And so both companies kind of fell into that. Like, we are better because we're consumer-like, we're better because we're B2B-like, but it was extremely challenging the first couple of quarters.
It's about friction, right? Teams have friction, humans have friction. There's DNA that comes from both companies. How do you de-frictionalize?
I think the biggest thing is people need to just see each other as people. It's really easy to say that team or that thing, that product. And every time there was a point of friction about integrating something, adopting something new, It was just about humanizing that as fast as possible. And then aligning on goals, like what's the outcomes we collectively need very early on, really also helped the as friction emerged along the way to like go back to the anchor. Like we're really all aligned on serving customers.
I often talk about separating the what from the how and being outcome led. So, love the answer. Were there moments ever in the early days where you hung your head in your hands and thought, how do I bring these two organizations together?
There were many days that I was like, I don't know how I'm going to tackle this one. Like, I know that I'm going to walk into a room of unhappy people on both ends and I need to bring them together. And I was like, look, I'm an immigrant from Brazil, American citizen now. And I love that I'm Brazilian. I love the food. I love the music. I love the culture. But I also love that I'm American. I love this country. My kids are here. I don't have to stop being Brazilian to love America. And I don't have to hate Brazil because I'm an American now. And I was like, this is exactly what we need to do. I want you guys to continue to love Slack and the roots of Slack, but also learn to love this home that is yours now. And I think that's a great mindset to think about acquisitions in general. It's easy to come in and say, well, I was a nimbler company now, and now I'm not anymore. It's like, no, actually bring your nimbleness, bring your culture, help the greater company become great. And I think if you don't lose who you are, but also embrace the new, it's really, really helpful. I feel like that analogy ended up giving me so many, so many runways within the team.
And I'm a Welshman, so I know about the turning up in this country and being a citizen and feel exactly the same way. But what is it about your Brazilianness that you bring culturally to work?
There's a couple of things actually, and I talk to, especially people that come from markets and countries that have had a lot of volatility. We are so much more used to dealing with crisis than Americans in general. I remember when inflation started to go up here, and I talked to some of my Brazilian colleagues or customers or friends, and they're like, oh gosh, that's nothing. Like, or Argentina, they're like, oh, we're going to have 80% inflation this year. So you just learn to build more resilience. And I feel like I certainly grew up having to have more resilience. And so you're more creative at problem solving. So I love that. And I feel like it's pretty common actually with a lot of people. So I think it's an asset that we should always be proud of. Brazilians are so welcoming, they're so friendly, they're also so creative. And I am that way. And so that's helped me in so many ways in terms of building a team and building a network and collaborating with others. And so I'm very proud of that for sure.
Tell us a little bit about your journey to the University of Michigan and then on to Microsoft.
I grew up in a really poor neighborhood in São Paulo. If you know São Paulo, it's divided by different zones, and I was in the East Zone, which is the poorest neighborhood of São Paulo. My family didn't have very much, and I got very lucky in high school that I was picked as one out of 10 kids to this high school professional development program. And that program is really designed for the kids that will never get to go to college, so that you can actually just get a job after high school. But for me, I was just like, I'll take it. I'll take it. I want to get a chance to get a job. And then I got a job to do a junior internship in high school at Ford Motor Company in Brazil. And I got to see so many cool jobs like engineering, marketing, sales. And it was just a breadth of perspective, got so much wider for me. And someone there, it was an American couple, was working out of Brazil for some time, said, you should go to college in the US. And I was like, I don't speak English. I don't have money. Was like, that sounds like a great idea, but not for me. And they helped me. They were like, just go learn English. I self-taught English for the most part, did a 1 month in the US during the summer so that I could get better at English and then started applying for scholarships. So I came here with, a bit of a moonshot, like complete moonshot. It was extremely hard. Getting accepted felt like the bar to make it, but actually getting to Michigan and not speaking English well enough and not being able to call my family was so much harder. And so that first couple of years of, just making it and surviving it really shaped my ability to take advantage of everything that I could, but also like just power through hard times. So that was a bit how I ended up in Michigan. And I genuinely felt like I won the lottery. You're an immigrant on scholarship, right? You do every single thing you can possibly do. I attended everything the school had. I got to intern at Apple. I went to those early days of WWDC / Steve Jobs, just amazing, amazing experience. And I decided to go to Microsoft in engineering company, and I was an engineer. So decided to go to Microsoft and then stayed. But I feel so grateful for my journey, those early journeys. Very hard to make it each step of the way, but learned a tremendous amount. And I do feel like it shapes me today. I don't get very frazzled easily.
This ambition is very clear. It's a through line in your career. And if I go back to your career at this moment, there's Bumble.
Hmm.
I mean, from Microsoft, Salesforce, Slack, Sonos in the middle, right? That I'm missing as well. Why Bumble?
When I was at Slack, that I could really continue to help the organization, of course. And I love Mark Benioff and I love Salesforce. I was learning a tremendous amount. And Whitney reached out to me and said, it's extremely, and I think you saw that in the introduction, the experience for women in connecting, not just from a romantic perspective, but professionally, friendship it's getting harder, not easier, and I need help. So that was really about mission than it was about anything else. It wasn't about a career move. It was about how can I do work that will have a greater impact. It was a tremendous learning experience for me, and I left Bumble. I resigned at the start of this year because Whitney wanted to get a more active role into the company, and I wanted to support her. So it wasn't a negative transition. I felt like I helped the company get a lot stronger from a foundational perspective, and I could hand it off to her in a much better state. From a career perspective, though, I learned how to be a public company CEO that is going through a really hard time. That's probably the hardest training you can get. Companies that are going through turnaround that are public have a very different set of strategies that you take, within the cost structure of the company, within the way that you manage expectations to the street. And I don't think I would have experienced as much as I did as Bumble was going through that in the public eye. So it was a very much, 3 years of learning compacted into like 5 quarters. And I was pretty grateful to have the ability to learn so much in that time.
Reporting to the street is not the easiest moment, right? Your degree of preparation prior to that call with the analysts is you need to be it's pretty robust. Were there moments where, having not had the experience of being a public CEO, do you worry about your capability secretly, quietly?
I am a very methodical, borderline perfectionist, and it's something I always have to be careful about. So every time I wanted to really, really, really be prepared. But there was a lot of learning, that I took along the way. There are things that I would have done differently now, knowing what I know about the street. And I'll give you a very concrete example that's public. If you look at my earnings at Bumble and you read the scripts of the earnings, I reset the forecast of the company 2 quarters in the third quarter. And it's because I took the time and I needed to take the time to understand the company's ability to drive revenue on a stronger foundation and a stronger and newer monetization model. That was too slow. That was too slow. And if you look at the CEO of Starbucks, he just came in, he reset right off his very first earnings. And so there is a whole dynamic when you're doing turnaround in the public eye. And that was, a new CEO not being clear enough. And so I feel like I've become so interested in market and company expectation management. So I've been studying many, many CEOs that I think do a great job at it so that I can get better myself at that. Public markets are looking at your growth rate. They're trying to decide if you're a growth stock or a value stock. They're trying to look at your profitability and how your profitability moves as you scale your growth. And they're looking at your ability to deliver consistently. And so that's the kind of balance of the three-legged stool that every company should aim to get. And you always want to be seen as a growth stock, not a value stock that drives the most amount of value realization for your investors.
When you think about really difficult moments that you've dealt with, do you have any examples of moments in your career that could be in any part of your career in any company where you literally were facing something, either a decision or a person or a meeting that was just incredibly hard?
Yeah, I'll give you one, again, very public example that was very hard for me personally. It was, I think it was about April or May of last year. So I had done one or two earnings of Bumble and, had laid off 30% of the employee base.
That's
We were
huge.
trying to do a massive amount of, change at the same time. Like the morale of the company wasn't in a great space. And I strained the company. I pushed the company to launch a product and a new marketing campaign all at the same time when all of this is happening. When you do that as a leader, things can break, right? Like processes break, things can break. And what happened for me and at Bumble was as part of our marketing relaunch, we launched a particular line that was quite offensive to women and it was awful. And I was with my daughter walking in a park when I got a message and started getting hit online by a lot of people saying that I didn't care about women. And here I am. I made a decision of left a great job to go support women. I'm holding my daughter's hand. And there's two things you can do at that time. You can hide, you can get mad at other people, or you can take accountability. And I was like, this is on me. I pushed the organization. We needed to get on a call. It was a Sunday, and it was Mother's Day Sunday. It's
Oh,
just like a hit to the heart in every possible
oh,
way. And I got on a call with, someone from marketing, someone from comms, a couple of my direct reports, try to assess what happened. What was the, circumstance that got us to even release what that got released? And how were we going to react as a company? And so I felt like it was really, so there's many strategies presented to me that day. Like, we should just not comment. Let's take it down, pretend it didn't happen. Better to not amplify the story. Everybody will forget. And I was like, gosh, is that the right thing to do for our customers? Like we actually made a mistake. And so I wanted to apologize. And I did, talk to Whitney quite a bit about it. It was, her company. I just took it and I felt terrible. And she was quite supportive. So we both very quickly aligned on we want to apologize to our customers. And then we want to do right. We want to take a step further. Let's actually support causes that really speaks to what the company does. And what happened was it was a process break. A creative person who was actually European thought the line was cheeky, which it was not. And then it didn't follow the standard process. And the company had a great process for safety and ethics that reviewed any lines or any copy that went out from market perspective. That got bypassed. And that's where it falls on me. That break in process happened because I was training the company too hard. And I wanted to stand up and go, it's not our marketing team's fault. They're trying to do the best that they can. And I didn't want the person, it was a junior person who came up with that copy, clearly didn't intend it. I didn't want to expose who that person was. I didn't want to fire them. I wanted them to learn. And I wanted us to be better. And I was just feeling like I really failed in every possible way. I felt like it was very personal. And I wanted to take full responsibility. As hard as that was, I learned a lot from it personally about how much to really push an organization. I learned a lot about how, creative and marketing teams work because I got super deep with the teams. And then I also like learned a lot about crisis communications. I learned a lot about, kind of just this cultural dynamic that's happening in social media that causes things to just go, huge overnight. There's very little room for error. But that was tough. And I don't wish that upon anybody
oh.
because it was really tough.
Thank you for being so open about that particular moment. You have many roles, as I said at the beginning. How do you balance?
For me, it's a constant calibration. We just talked about stressors, the way that I internalize a lot of it, because I want to over prepare, because I don't want to be frazzled, etc. I really need to run. And that's how I manage my own alone time and thinking time. And so I'm trying to constantly juggle between running and my kids and my husband and the dog and travel. Yeah, look at that. My favorite kid is a little furrier. Just a hint there for everybody. There are certain things that I will not, pass. Like I really want to be present for certain sort of events in my kid's life and instead of my husband's life, and then I don't cross the line on that. And then I'm constantly managing how to manage my time. It's not a constant. Like I usually make a plan for the spring, for the summer, and for the fall because everything changes every one of these seasons. And so I feel that everybody should figure out their formula. What I find is a lot of women sometimes will reach out to me and ask, like, I have, kids, and like, what do I do? And I'm like, just don't be at a point that you're just reacting because you're gonna feel like you're drowning. Like make a plan, just like you'd plan a project. Plan your time. Time is a real gift, and it's the most precious resource we all have. So plan your time like a project. Be very intentional about it and calibrate it.
Does AI worry you as your children grow up, or in the context even of what social media could become? You've been involved in it in both of those, right? The social media component and the AI component. Does it worry you?
I'm an optimist, maybe because I'm a technologist, I'm an optimist about the benefits it can have. But it does worry me, right? Especially in the fact that there's very few large companies that have ownership over foundational models. It does worry me about who controls the knowledge. And so as we think about social media and the social media effect, social media controls how people, opinion, what they see, what the news is, and how they vote, how they behave. And I think, generative AI, as people are doing search, right? It's no longer just search and you're seeing 5 websites. You're actually getting curated knowledge. If that knowledge is biased, the amplification of what we already see today with social media can become even greater. And we won't even understand the effects of that in society quite yet because we're too nascent on this journey. So I certainly worry. And I think about, how can we get more voices in regulatory and guardrails across these organizations that have an insane amount of power? And for companies like Intellistack or other companies that are developing technology on top of these models, how do your technology guardrails? And I think that was, certainly something across both Slack, Bumble that we put a lot of focus on is how do we not amplify bias? How do we not amplify error and hallucination and detect that with more responsibility? There's a lot of risk, and I think it's important to be thoughtful about that.
As you think about your parenting, does this motion of AI and this motion of social media worry you for the world in which they're going to grow up in, especially as I think your son is about to enter teenage years?
As a parent, I try to introduce technology very thoughtfully for our kids. So my son got a phone in 8th grade, but not before. They don't use social media, but they're very well aware of it. I do think that our kids, like my kids' age, your kids' age, Aled, are going to be AI first.
Yep.
And I'll tell you all. Last week, my son said, "Yeah, I was thinking about being a software engineer, but not anymore. I mean, that job will be dead by the time I graduate." And I was like, "Wow, I guess that's the opinion of a 14-year-old." But I thought it was pretty fascinating because I've never said that. My husband hasn't ever said that. But kids are already forming of like AI is going to change some jobs and what jobs do, which I thought was pretty fascinating. So for us, I want my kids to be aware of it, to be informed, to be critical thinkers, and to know how to use it responsibly, as opposed to become dependent on it. We're definitely not the family that has phones or iPads on a table or at a restaurant. We have a chessboard or a game or coloring, and we interact. And it's been like sometimes easier than others, right? Because kids can be a little challenging, and I don't judge parents at all. Like I think everybody has to figure out what works for your family. But we've taken a really hard line because we want them to be very intentional about technology use.
Your transparency, your honesty, your insights, and the fact that you've been able to share not just your career, but all the way from the early days of Brazil right the way to where you are now. We are so grateful for your warmth and graciousness. It's such a pleasure to have got to know you. And we are fascinated to see what happens next.
Thank you. It's again, the honor is all mine. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm incredibly excited to see how much you're all going to achieve, and incredibly excited about the direction that Intellistack has. So I'll be watching. But thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure. It's an honor. Thank you.